The Meta Quest 3 versus the Samsung Galaxy XR. What are the differences and which one is the best? Let's dive right into it. Now, the Meta Quest 3 and the Samsung Galaxy XR are both very different headsets, because where Meta tries to give you that standalone VR experience in games at a lower price cost, the Galaxy XR on the other hand has its main focus on productivity and applications, while also pushing the VR hardware to the next level. So to start off this comparison, we should first talk about the headset itself. And directly the first thing that you will notice is that while the Quest 3 has that standard form factor from Meta that weighs in at about 515 grams, the Galaxy XR looks a lot more similar to something like the Apple Vision Pro, and that while also weighing in slightly more at 540 grams respectively. And it is also from these outside looks where we can already see the first main differences. Since the Galaxy XR here has originally an open face design with the option to add some included light blockers to it if you want that full immersion, while the Quest 3 has that standard facial cushion from the start that blocks all the light from the outside. And the second difference in design is that the Galaxy XR comes with an Elite style head strap that can be adjusted with the button on the back, while the Quest 3 though is using that older soft dual bend instead that you can adjust by pulling either sides with the plastic clips near the base of it. However, another important thing here is that the Galaxy XR makes use of an external battery which is tethered to the headset at all time, and that while the Quest 3 has a battery built into it, meaning you won't need any external pucks or cables here at all. Now, keep in mind though that both their battery life clocks in at about 2 hours on a single charge. However, the biggest differences between them can be seen when we check out the specs of the hardware, because one of the main selling points of the Galaxy XR is of course the screen, since this one rocks two 4K OLED panels that can give you those vibrant colors and high pixel density. Now the Quest 3 instead has two LCD panels with a resolution of 2064 by 2208 pixels per eye. And that, while still very sharp compared to other standalone headsets, is still nearly half the amount of pixels compared to those of Samsung. Although, the Quest 3 does have a refresh rate of 120Hz, while the Galaxy XR is kept at 90Hz max. Now next to that, it is also good to know that their field of view is pretty much identical. And that also goes for their lenses, since they are using the same type of pancake optics. And these are the newer versions that can give you that bigger sweet spot compared to the older Fresnel lenses. But the Galaxy XR does have some extra features here that are worth mentioning, such as eye tracking for example, thanks to its inward-facing cameras, as well as foveated rendering as a result of this in the first place. But that gets us to their core, with the Quest 3 having the Snapdragon XR2 Gen 2 chip running it, while the Galaxy XR has that newer XR2 Plus Gen 2 that gives it an extra boost. And overall, this should result in a net increase of about 20% in CPU and about 15% in GPU. And moving on to the outside of the headset, both of them are rocking the external cameras here, which are used for things like hand tracking, as well as mixed reality. And in this case, the Galaxy XR has two 6.5 megapixel units, while the Quest 3 has two 4 megapixel ones. Luckily though, there are also some other things where the Quest 3 actually has a slight advantage. For example, right out of the box, the Quest headsets come with Touch Plus controllers included. And in case of Samsung, this is not the case at all. So this would set you back another $250 once they finally come back in stock. And secondly, the Galaxy XR does also not have a headphone jack. So if you want to use some wired earphones, then you want to keep that in mind. But before we get to the next most important differences between the Quest 3 and the Galaxy XR, let's first have a quick word from the company that made this video possible. Because none other than CatVR, who are known for creating VR treadmills that look like they come straight out of Ready Player One, are once again taking virtual reality to the next level. Because while we are normally limited by the boundary system inside our VR experiences, it is CatVR that has created these VR treadmills that let you run and jump without any limitation. And since their most recent version, which is known as the C2 Plus Enhanced, is compatible with every VR headset that you can think of, it is also often considered as the dream upgrade for any VR user. And they even go so far that it has things like haptic feedback built into it, as well as a vehicle hub, which will make it feel even more realistic when you're racing on a track or flying through the sky. And as a cherry on top, you can also use the code VRelity for a whopping $130 off on your entire purchase. So for those who are interested, I'll leave a link in the description below. And that gets us to the software. Now here, the Quest 3 is running Horizon OS, which is Meta's own software that has seen quite a lot of changes over the past years. And on top of that, they now also have options out there for you to switch to the so-called Navigator UI. And that would make the overall interface look pretty similar to that of Vision Pro. But the standard one has all the basic functions that you come to expect, while also having a big focus on Horizon Worlds, and that is Meta's own social VR platform. Now on the other hand though, we have Samsung's headset that makes use of the new Android XR. And this honestly looks pretty much like your base Galaxy phone, but then inside virtual reality. And that also means that you can expect nearly all Android applications to work from within here. And on top of that, Samsung also worked together with Google and other third parties to bring some of the biggest applications to their headset natively. Think about things like Google Maps and Netflix, as well as some Gemini AI features. But that gets us probably to the most important part of all, and that is the games. Because the Meta Quest 3 has a massive library of VR titles for you to choose from, as well as a bunch of exclusives that you can't find anywhere else. And that goes from VR games to mixed reality experiences and everything in between. Now, the Samsung Galaxy XR does also have some VR titles, but not nearly as broad as that of Quest 3. But Samsung also clearly mentioned that gaming isn't their main focus. But luckily, besides standalone games though, you can also connect your Quest 3 to a PC over something like Steam Link or Meta's own AirLink. And in that way, you can play the entire Steam VR library. Now keep in mind, there are also some alternatives out there that might work better for you depending on your situation, such as the popular virtual desktop application. But at the end of the day, this also goes for Galaxy XR, since they have their own Link variant that should give you that nice PC VR library access as well. However, we should also talk about the elephant in the room, and that is the price. Because the Meta Quest 3 comes in at a total of $499 for its 512GB model, while the Samsung Galaxy XR will set you back a whopping $1,799 instead, while also only having 256GB of internal storage. Now luckily, when it comes to the Quest 3, you can also get a total of $30 of free store credit with your headset that you can spend on whatever you want. And I will leave a link for that in the description below, so make sure not to miss out on that. But that also gets us to the final conclusion. Now both the Quest 3 and the Galaxy XR are some awesome VR headsets. But on one side, the Meta Quest 3 is focused mostly on VR gaming while still keeping the total price as low as possible. And the Samsung Galaxy XR on the other hand does have some big hardware improvements, which go from its micro OLED display to eye tracking and its new XR2 Plus Gen 2 chip, but then coming in at a much higher cost. So, if your goal is mostly to play the latest VR games, then I think in that case, the Quest 3 is probably your best choice. While if instead, you mainly want to use your headset for things like productivity or as a replacement for your PC and phone, then the Galaxy XR might be the right fit for you. However, that is not all, because there are also 6 important things that you need to know before you're thinking of buying the Galaxy XR headset. So click on the video that you see on screen right now to make sure you don't miss out on that. And of course, stay awesome.